On our wedding night, Edward dragged me from the guest room to the master bedroom. He tilted my chin up, his voice husky. "Chloe, I didn't marry you to have a platonic relationship." 3 minutes later, Edward and I were just staring at each other. Girls, watch out for those older, lean guys with the high nose bridges and prominent Adam's apples. Edward, my biggest wish right now is to see you married and settled down, Edward's mom said weakly from her hospital bed. I was worried Edward would misunderstand, so I secretly gave his mom a look. His mom caught on quick. "Of course, it has to be with Chloe. I won't accept any other daughter-in-law." Our doctor friend, who we'd already gotten on our side, chimed in, "Edward, your mom raised you all by herself. It wasn't easy. This is her only wish right now, just say yes. Besides, a happy patient recovers faster." Their tag teaming worked. Edward dragged me to City Hall that same day. Before we went in, he asked me seriously, "Chloe, marriage isn't a game. Are you sure about this? You're still young, you just started working. Plus, I'm 8 years older than you. Have you thought about our age gap and the problems that might come up?" He went on and on. I didn't hear a word. I just saw those alluring thin lips, lightly touching and then parting, looking perfectly moist and shiny. After we get this certificate, I'm gonna kiss him senseless, I thought. My mind was already ringing with a devilish, no, a delightful laugh. When we got back to the hospital room, Edward and I were officially married. His mom looked at the marriage certificate over and over, a smile she couldn't hold back spreading across her face. Then, she practically did a kip-up and sat right up in bed. She threw on a coat and briskly headed for the door. "Come on, I'll show you the new apartment I got for you." Edward, who rarely showed his emotions, remained expressionless, though he probably sensed he'd been set up. He just turned his head towards our doctor friend, his gaze ice cold. The doctor friend laughed awkwardly. "A medical miracle. It must be a medical miracle." The new place was a huge apartment downtown, not far from my ad agency or the university where Edward taught. It was crazy expensive, which totally fit my mother-in-law's rich lady status. I've stocked it with all the basics. The rest, you two can figure out together. With that, she handed me a credit card. "Chloe, take this. I'll put $20,000 on it for you every month as spending money. You're really making a sacrifice marrying this poker face." I tried to refuse, but my mother-in-law had already said her piece and left. I glanced back at that handsome, stern poker face. I wouldn't exactly call it a sacrifice. I could tell Edward was a bit lost. He needed time to process everything. So, I thoughtfully moved my luggage into the guest room. I wasn't against forcing the issue, but there was plenty of time, and I'd rather he actually want to sleep with me. I just didn't expect that later that night, after I'd washed up and was about to get into bed, Edward knocked on my door. He was wearing navy blue loungewear, looking down at me, his bangs falling softly over his eyebrows. He seemed less like the cool, academic type I was used to and more like a mature husband. "I recall you agreed to marry me today willingly," he said. Huh. I didn't get what he meant. Seeing me tilt my head, confused, he gently lifted my chin, his voice husky. "Chloe, I didn't marry you to have a platonic relationship. So, come here." Edward said just those 2 words and turned towards the master bedroom. It clicked instantly. I eagerly followed him. And eagerly hopped into bed. Pulled up the covers, pouted playfully, and started undressing, a whole sequence of moves. Edward's Adam's apple bobbed as he leaned down towards me. Then, a slightly awkward kiss landed, accompanied by hot, ragged breaths. Even though each touch was so light, and we were both super stiff, I still felt my heart tremble. My body felt like it was melting. "Professor Edward, you can proceed." As if he'd gotten permission, Edward began a more intimate exploration. But 3 minutes later, the exploration ended abruptly. We just stared at each other. Should I say something to comfort him? But I needed comforting too. I hadn't really hoped to win Edward's heart. Now I couldn't even enjoy his body. 3 minutes. Heaven to hell. Girls. Warning. Warning. Stay away from those older, lean guys with the high-nose bridges and prominent Adam's apples. The sudden shock kept me up all night. The next day, sporting dark circles under my eyes, I met up with my bestie Sophie for afternoon tea. I also brought the marriage certificate to show her. She gave me a thumbs up. Professor Edward has so many admirers, but you're the most dedicated. You even learned to Photoshop. I didn't say anything, just frowned and stared at her. She finally got it and her voice shot up. Holy crap, don't tell me this marriage certificate is real. No wonder Sophie was so shocked. Edward was the youngest professor in our university's history department, famous for being an ice prince, totally unattainable. I fell for him at first sight during my senior year of college and chased him for a year. But he was always cold towards me. Later, after graduation, I started working. Dealing with clients drained all my energy. Chasing guys seemed like more effort than standing celebrities. So I gave up on Edward and started following a boy band member. Watching their performances and looking at their pictures every day was a comfort. But it didn't last long. This young idol quickly had a scandal for privately contacting fans. The fellow fan I clicked with most in the fan group and I arranged to meet up and bash him. A girlfriend fan and a mom fan. Together, we thoroughly trashed this disgraced celebrity. The more we complained, the more we realized our values aligned, and the more we felt like we should have met sooner. It got late, and the fellow fan said, "My son happens to be nearby. I'll have him pick me up and give you a ride home too." I was totally surprised. "Wow, your kid can drive already? You must have had him pretty young, huh?" The fan laughed so hard she almost fell over. "Oh honey, my son is probably quite a bit older than you." Her skin looked amazing, and she had an air of elegance. Hearing her say that, I could hardly believe it. And then came the even more unbelievable part. Her son arrived. It was Edward. "So, you and Professor Edward had a shotgun wedding, and it was his mom who set it up?" Sophie was still scrutinizing the marriage certificate. She still couldn't believe someone as aloof as Edward would actually get married so suddenly. I nodded. Well, there were definitely some tactics involved. So what? You landed him. That's what matters. Sophie looked at me enviously. You lucky dog, living the dream. I'm so jealous. Suddenly having a hot husband and a generous mother-in-law. Anyone would want to be in my shoes for a couple of episodes. But then I suddenly remembered Edward's performance last night. You might want to hold off on that jealousy, I sighed. Why? You know those green popsicles we used to eat as kids, the ones that would get all floppy? Sophie got it instantly, her eyes wide. No way. Professor Edward is all show and no go? Do guys really hit their peak at 25 and then it's all downhill to 60? That night, I was in agony. I was afraid if I just went to sleep in the guest room, it would hurt Edward's pride. But sleeping together was just too awkward. After thinking it over, I came up with a brilliant plan. Pull the covers over my head and pretend to be asleep. By the time Edward finished washing up and got into bed, I had my breathing under control and was in a comfortable position. But for heaven's sake, with all my planning, I forgot to silence my phone. And the ringer volume was shockingly loud. It wouldn't make sense to pretend I didn't hear it, so I feigned waking up with a start and groggily answered the call. Before I could even speak, a loud voice on the other end blared. If a woman wants to be happy, she needs male models. 1 for a pick-me-up, 2 for endless energy, 3 for eternal youth. Girl, hurry up, I'm waiting for you with 3 male models at the Northside Club. Edward was right next to me. And the earpiece sounded like it was on speakerphone. I felt the person beside me catch his breath. Thinking fast, I yelled into the phone, You've got the wrong number. Who are you calling, girl? I've never been to that kind of place. Don't you call again. Then I quickly hung up. And played dead. I pulled the covers over my head again. But then I heard a muffled, hesitant voice. Should I drive you there? How can someone be so considerate? Edward parked the car on the side of the road and said he'd wait for me outside, no matter how late. I gave a dry laugh and tried to reassure him. I'll just peek in from the doorway of the private room, I won't go inside. Even after saying it, I still felt guilty, like I was sneaking around. When I reached the club's revolving door, I glanced back at him again. And what a sight! Edward had gotten out of the car. He was leaning against the car door, his head bowed. His profile, silhouetted by the moonlight, had a kind of elegant and profound, almost ethereal quality. They say insecurity is a man's best cosmetic surgery, right? The old Edward was like a bottomless lake. Even a glance from him felt like a gift. Now, realizing his inadequacy, and that he might not be able to keep his wife, he had an added air of fragile beauty. Just one more look at him, and strange ripples would stir in your heart. These ripples lasted until I walked into the private room. Loud music and young faces immediately surrounded me. I was finally getting a chance to let loose, and I thought I'd be excited. But even with a cute young guy fawning over me, kissing the back of my hand, and dancing close, I still felt this emptiness inside. Even though Edward had technically allowed this, I felt suffocated. I opened a window to get some air. And right then, I saw that familiar figure again. He was pacing back and forth by the car, hands in his trouser pockets, his long legs conspicuous. His black leather shoes reflected the clear moonlight, and also, a faint sense of vulnerability. I have to go back. I couldn't sit still any longer. I got up to say goodbye to Sophie. She looked completely baffled. You're choosing to go back and be a grass widow, instead of enjoying these young hotties? It's not right. Didn't your Professor Edward say it was okay? But the more he indulges me like this, the more I feel like I'm taking advantage of him. Sophie was speechless and had to enjoy the 3 male models all by herself. Meanwhile, I hurried out of the room, quickening my pace without realizing it. In my rush, I bumped into someone I knew. Leo? What are you doing here? Why else? Working, entertaining clients, of course. Leo was a college classmate from my major. After graduation, he went back to help with his family's business. So I knew he was just joking around, the way friends do. He was always outgoing in school, and we used to tease each other a lot. But right now, I couldn't manage a smile. All I could think about was poor Professor Edward. Let's catch up another time. I have something urgent today. Seeing me hurry over, Edward gallantly opened the car door for me. Let's go home, I said after getting in. But Edward didn't start the engine right away. Instead, he turned to the side and studied me closely. I felt uncomfortable under his gaze, my face flushing. Just as I was about to say something to lighten the mood, he suddenly took my hand. A faint lipstick mark on the back of my hand caught his eye. My heart skipped a beat. Crap. It must have been from that young guy earlier. A kiss is one thing, but why was he wearing lipstick? I was about to make an excuse, but Edward took a handkerchief from his jacket pocket. He gently wiped off the lipstick mark, then folded the handkerchief with an unreadable expression. Did you have fun? He asked. As usual, I couldn't detect any emotion in his tone. I didn't, really, I quickly explained. I just said hi and left. You can tell by how long I was gone. Hearing this, Edward smiled. A bitter smile. Actually, you don't need to explain. I brought you here. I wouldn't blame you. I only blame myself. I knew it would always come back to this. Edward's eyes looked even sadder than before. Just then, a voice came from outside the car window. Leo sounded shocked. Isn't that Professor Edward from the history department? Chloe, what are you two doing together? We're married, I answered directly. My brain was still short-circuiting. Hearing the word married, Leo was even more astounded. Are we even friends? Something this huge, and you didn't tell me? It all happened so suddenly. I'll treat everyone to dinner another day and tell you all then. No way, why wait? There's no time like the present. He turned his gaze to Edward. Professor Edward, I've had a bit to drink today. Would you mind giving me a ride? I'd love to get an early scoop on the gossip. Edward nodded. The aloofness on his face was obvious. Leo, on the other hand, was a social butterfly and started chattering away with questions as soon as he got in the car. A song played in the car with the lyrics, "How could I bear to blame you for making a mistake? It was me who gave you too much freedom." I inexplicably felt it matched my mood perfectly today. Leo heard it too and casually remarked, "Professor Edward, you still listen to such old songs?" This sentence seemed to strike a nerve with Edward. His expression froze, and the air around him turned icy. It's me who likes listening to it. I tried to smooth things over, but Leo quickly called my bluff. Don't you usually listen to boy bands? What was going on? Leo was being kind of a pot stirrer today. After that day, Edward changed noticeably. His dark trench coats, overcoats, and suits were replaced with flashy sweatshirts, hoodies, and t-shirts. His original amber and woodsy cologne smelled great. Now it was a pungent citrus scent. After failing to get his heart or his healthy body, now I'd even lost his composed, ascetic exterior. What had marriage really brought me? Just $20,000 a month in spending money? Hee hee, well, that wasn't so bad. But for the sake of my own eyes, I decided to drop a hint to Edward at dinner. Edward cooked dinner almost every day. It was always nutritious, delicious, and looked amazing. I ate happily, while mentally plotting how to bring it up. Turns out, Edward, who usually followed the don't speak at meals, don't chat in bed rule, spoke first. Tomorrow night, the department faculty are having a dinner. Oh, what a coincidence, I have a class reunion tomorrow night. After I replied, I met his gaze. I couldn't shake the feeling that some kind of expectation in his eyes had just been dashed. No time to dwell on it, I pressed my advantage. So, are you going to wear something like this to your dinner tomorrow too? You don't think it looks good? My opinion isn't important, really. You have your freedom to wear what you want. You used to always wear dark colors, now you want a change of style, I get it. I wouldn't casually comment on someone's fashion choices. The most important thing is that you're happy wearing it. Huh. As I was talking, I heard something shatter. I don't know if it was Sophie's big mouth or Leo being a loudmouth, but as soon as the class reunion started, everyone already knew I'd married Professor Edward. Professor Edward actually came down to earth. Chloe, you're so lucky. I wonder how many girls' hearts are going to be broken. Chloe, quick, tell us, how did you land Professor Edward? Chloe, what's it like to wake up every morning and see such an incredibly handsome face? Sigh, they had no idea about the bitter struggles of this married woman. I could only give a few vague answers and then lowered my head to drink my sorrows away. The reunion ended. Leo saw how drunk I was and insisted on driving me home. He poured me a glass of warm water and settled me on the sofa. Your husband isn't home this late? He knew you had a reunion, didn't he even come to pick you up? He had a dinner thing today too, I mumbled. Thanks for bringing me back. You should head home too. But Leo showed no intention of leaving. Instead, he moved closer, crouching down by my feet. There was an undercurrent in his eyes. Chloe, are you really happy after getting married? Seriously? How presumptuous is that? I sensed the atmosphere was really off, so I grabbed my glass and just kept drinking water. Suddenly, the sound of the door unlocking. Edward was finally back. What a lifesaver. After Leo left, Edward carried me back to the bedroom. I groggily fell asleep. When I woke up again, it was the middle of the night. I was alone in the empty bed. I shakily got out of bed to look for him and found Edward on the living room sofa, completely drunk. 2 empty bottles of red wine were beside him, his face flushed crimson. He looked even more drunk than I had been. I snatched the wine glass from his hand. Edward, what's wrong? Stop drinking, you need to rest. Before I could finish, he pulled me down onto the sofa and pressed his body against mine. "Edward, what? What are you doing? You can't bring people home." His voice trembled, and the scent of grapes wafted to my nose. "I'll go along with whatever you want to do, but you can't bring people home, okay?" It seemed he'd misunderstood. But he didn't give me a chance to explain before kissing me demandingly. His burning lips assaulted my breath like a hurricane. If the kiss on our wedding night was a mere taste, tonight, Edward seemed determined to devour me completely. This was so unlike him. Could the distinguished and self-possessed Professor Edward actually have a side where he lost control? And it was because of me. As I was thinking this, Edward suddenly said, "Chloe, give me one more chance, okay?" His warm, moist breath fanned my ear. My heartbeat quickened involuntarily. I looked into his eyes, taking it as a silent agreement. The suggestive atmosphere instantly intensified in the darkness. Edward caressed me as if I were a treasure. This time seemed like it would be different. I closed my eyes. Well, it was different, all right. This time it wasn't 3 minutes. This time it was straight to a melted popsicle. The kind that just won't freeze. If you knew I was lying there naked on the sofa, awkwardly staring into space, you'd think my life was tragic too. The next day was a Saturday. I woke up and stared at the ceiling, feeling completely devoid of hope. The person beside me was gone. Then I received 2 texts. "Have some things to do at the university today. Anything you want for dinner tonight? Let me know if you think of something." What a great guy. Handsome, a good homemaker, rich, good physique, educated. But he just couldn't perform. Sigh, nobody's perfect, I guess. I let out a deep sigh and got out of bed to find something to eat. As soon as I reached the kitchen, I smelled traditional Chinese medicine. But I didn't see any herbs or dregs. I opened the fridge. It was fully stocked with my favorite snacks and fruits. There were little colored sticky notes next to them. "Strawberries are washed, you can eat them directly. The oranges are a bit sour, if you don't like them, leave them for me. Eating too much chocolate can cause rapid heartbeat, nausea, and diarrhea. Max 3 pieces a day." Combining what Edward said last night with his sudden loss of control, a strange thought occurred to me. Could it be that he likes me? A call from Sophie interrupted my thoughts. She asked me how things were going with Edward. "That's a tough question to answer," I said after thinking for a moment. "The condition is still the same, but I have this feeling that he might, possibly, maybe, probably likes me a little." "Are you sure?" Sophie's tone was skeptical. "So, you have a different opinion?" I was on a shoot at the university today and happened to run into Professor Edward. Before she could finish, I heard someone rushing her on her end. She quickly said, "I have to get back to work. I'll send you the photos I took in a bit. You can see for yourself." Soon, I received 2 photos from Sophie. Both showed Edward strolling on the university's athletic field with a very elegant-looking female teacher. In the first photo, Edward was looking down, smiling faintly, a hint of shyness at the corners of his mouth. In the second, Edward's lips were slightly parted as if he was saying something, his eyes full of tenderness and affection. Whichever expression it was, he had never shown it to me. So, was all his kindness towards me fake? Just because I was his wife in name only? Things are already like this, and he's still flirting with someone else? Doesn't he know you don't air your dirty laundry in public? But that teacher is really elegant. She must be the type he genuinely likes, right? Questions popped up in my mind one after another. Each one made my chest tighten. Tears started falling unconsciously. I remembered what Leo had asked me that day. "Are you really happy after getting married?" There was happiness. After all, Edward was really handsome. And because of his inadequacy, he was trying his best to make it up to me, to be considerate. But it seemed like there was more hurt. Like last night, like right now. The phone in my hand suddenly lit up again. A message from Edward. "Still asleep? Wanted to ask if you're free tomorrow? I want to take you somewhere." My fingertips hesitated, but finally, I sent the message, Edward, let's get a divorce. When Edward rushed home, he was still carrying groceries. Seeing me sitting on the sofa silently, he wordlessly tied on an apron and started cooking. The meal was oppressive. Edward occasionally glanced at my expression. Actually, his own face looked much worse than mine. Later, I had no appetite and was about to leave the table. He stood up and grabbed my wrist. You want a divorce because I... He trailed off, pressing his lips together tightly. I said, I've looked into it. We need to go to City Hall on Monday to make an appointment, and then we can officially divorce after a month. Okay, I understand. Edward dejectedly let go of my hand. During the 1-month cooling-off period, I moved back into the guest room. Edward continued to cook and take care of me as usual. He just spoke even less than before. True. I was never the one he could open up to and chat happily with anyway. I had a day off and was home alone. My mother-in-law came over, back from her trip abroad, carrying bags full of gifts. Chloe, dear, I'll take you with me next time. It was so much fun there. By the way, is your allowance still enough? Tell me if it's not. I had planned to use this opportunity to tell my mother-in-law about the divorce. But she had always been so good to me, I really didn't know how to bring it up. But my mother-in-law was sharp. She read something just from my expression. You don't look happy. Did Edward do something to upset you? I shook my head. Some things just had to be said eventually. Actually, Edward and I are planning to get a divorce. It felt too private, so I didn't tell her the specific reasons. She looked thoughtful, then took my hand and said, Chloe, you're both adults. Whatever decision you make, I won't stand in your way. There's just one thing I think I should tell you. That boy, Edward, he tends to keep everything bottled up inside. If you're thinking of divorce because you feel he doesn't like you, well, I actually think, at least from my perspective, he likes you very much. My mother-in-law continued to explain, Edward was getting older and still not dating, so I wasn't without my suspicions that he might like men. But that day he came to pick me up, he saw us together, and his eyes instantly changed. I could see you both had feelings for each other, that's why I played matchmaker. And let's be honest, do you really think he'd be foolish enough to completely fall for the trap we set? He was a willing fish taking the bait. My mother-in-law shared many of her thoughts with me. It was so much information, I was left completely stunned. Even after she left, my head was still throbbing. Lost in my complicated emotions, I received a message from my boss. He sent me a design draft that needed urgent revisions. I had to temporarily set aside these tangled emotions and use the computer in the study to work on the draft. The revisions went quickly, but I accidentally stumbled upon some strange things in the computer's browser history. First time 3 minutes, is there hope? How to be good to wife? Does drinking too much alcohol cause performance issues? Is Chinese medicine helpful? Wife wants divorce because I can't perform, what to do? How to win back wife during divorce cooling off period. I clicked on them one by one. Besides the exaggerated ads, I actually learned quite a bit. It seemed like all this information confirmed what my mother-in-law had said before she left. I thought, why not search Edward's study, where he often spends time, to see if there's any other evidence. Unexpectedly, I actually found something. In the right-hand drawer, there was an exquisite jewelry box. Inside was a butterfly-shaped diamond ring. Kind of old-fashioned, just Edward's taste. The inside of the ring was engraved with our initials. Underneath the jewelry box was an old-looking notebook. I debated with myself for 3 minutes before deciding to open it. March 12th, a young woman came into the office today, said she couldn't hear in her left ear and needed to take leave for the hospital. She was all tears and snot, but when she saw me, she stopped crying and just blurted out, "Professor, you're so handsome." It wasn't the first time I'd heard something like that, but she said it in a particularly cute way. So much so that even though I wasn't her advisor and didn't even belong in that office, I still offered to take her to the hospital. Turns out, there was nothing seriously wrong with the young woman's ear. The doctor just pulled out a huge clump of earwax. I looked down, trying not to look at her, hoping to ease her embarrassment, but she didn't say a word the whole way. This was the scene of my incredibly embarrassing first meeting with Edward. Reading it, I was a bit touched. But mostly speechless. What on earth was there to even record about this? After silently cursing him in my head, I read on. April 3rd, the young woman has been messaging me a lot these past few days, saying really interesting things. I should reply, but I'm so afraid she'll find out how boring I am, so I just cautiously reply read each time. Damn it, after replying, I feel even more boring. May 23rd, I've noticed the young woman's little crush on me. It makes me a bit happy, but I've started to deliberately distance myself. Age is one factor, she can be impulsive, but I really can't. Another is principle. As a teacher, I shouldn't get romantically involved with a student. Should I hint that she should wait? Wait until she graduates, until she's seen more of the world, and if she still likes me then, I'll definitely rush to her without hesitation. But what right do I have to tell her these things? July 20th, I regret it. The young woman stopped contacting me after graduation. Has she met someone better in the working world? Then I should wish her well. Forget it, I'm really not that magnanimous. So, can I ask her? But I no longer have the standing to ask. Professor Edward's inner monologue was actually so rich. I read through it all, line by line, carefully. Without realizing it, tears were streaming down my face. All those little jealousies and huge grievances slowly dissipated with the words. Right now, I only wanted to do one thing. Go find him. Maybe some things could be cleared up. Edward finished his class and walked out of the classroom, looking up to see me standing in the hallway. He raised an eyebrow slightly and walked towards me, the curve of his lips impossible to hide. Then, as if he remembered something, his expression instantly dimmed. Are you looking for me for something? He asked dejectedly, his distinct eyelashes trembling slightly. It was between classes, and the hallway was crowded. Many students were looking our way. Some even pretended to walk past us, their ears pricked up. After glancing around at everyone's gossipy eyes, I stood on my tiptoes and whispered in Edward's ear, Professor Edward, will you hold my hand? I admit it was childish. And I wasn't sure if Edward would do it. Luckily, Edward didn't give me much time to overthink. He took my hand without hesitation. We walked round and round the university's athletic field. Edward's palms were sweaty. Can we go sit in the stands for a bit? I'm tired of walking. I wanted to find a quiet place. After all, I still had many questions for him. But Edward frowned. Let's just walk 2 more laps. Just 2. Me, on the last lap, a familiar face approached us with a smile. It was the beautiful teacher from the photos. Professor Edward, this must be the wife you're always talking about, right? She's really pretty. Edward scratched his head, his ears turning slightly red. Chloe, let me introduce you. This is Olivia. Olivia, this is Chloe. Olivia greeted me warmly. There was an inexplicable joy in her eyes when she looked at me. Today I finally have time to go. Olivia. Edward cut her off abruptly. Don't you have a class soon? It's almost time. Olivia walked away with a knowing look. This made me, who had let my guard down, once again feel that there was definitely a secret between them. Edward, are you hiding something from me? Edward hemmed and hawed, which annoyed me. I came here today specifically to talk things through with you. If you don't want to talk, then I'm leaving. I'll talk. He sighed helplessly and finally confessed his secret with Olivia. It turned out Edward had always felt our marriage was too rushed. He wanted to hold a proper proposal ceremony for me at Olivia's BB. But this had dragged on for a long time, and Olivia kept asking out of curiosity. Edward didn't want to tell her about the divorce, so he just said I was busy and hadn't found the time. So you don't like Olivia? What? Edward couldn't believe his ears. You thought I liked Olivia? I showed him the photos Sophie had sent. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have let my imagination run wild. Hearing the apology in my voice, Edward gently ruffled my hair. Actually, you could have just asked me directly. I thought I didn't have the right. You're my wife. You have every right. With that, Edward stepped forward and hugged me. So, you wanted a divorce because of this, not because Edward, let's try again. I remembered his browser history. Once because of inexperience. Once because he was dead drunk. Maybe those 2 times weren't your actual level, I mumbled into Edward's chest, my face as red as a cooked shrimp. Edward's aggrieved voice reached my ear. I've really been trying to take care of myself lately. And just in case, I've also tried to learn some other methods. Other methods? I didn't quite get what Edward meant. Until he lightly tickled my palm with his fingertip. As it turned out, Edward didn't need to learn any of those other things. Staring at the ceiling that felt like it was about to collapse, I finally managed to squeeze out, Edward, did you take something? No. So all that stuff in TV shows about being wild in bed after drinking is fake, right? If you drink too much, you actually just... I hadn't even finished my sentence. Edward buried his hot, flushed face in the crook of my neck. Chloe, can we please not talk about this? An idea struck me. While he was too flustered to be angry, I quickly confessed my misdeed. Actually, I read your journal today. Edward's body stiffened, then he left a light bite mark on my shoulder. I like you, his voice was muffled. I've liked you for a long time. So, the day we got married, I was ecstatic. But I'm not very good at loving someone. Will you teach me? As he spoke, Edward slipped something cool onto my ring finger. While I was still relatively clear-headed, I made my requests. Okay, the first thing I'll teach you is, I want you to be more proactive. The second thing is, don't keep everything bottled up inside. These words were for Edward. And also, it seemed, for myself. Okay. I'll be proactive, Edward replied, planting fiery kisses on my collarbone, my neck. The fire that had just barely subsided was reignited. Belatedly, I pushed him away. No. That's not what I meant. Edward had developed a taste for it. And I felt like a drained, desperate man who just wanted to sit in his car for a while every day. One day, my boss asked me to work overtime, and I happily agreed. Finally, I thought, I wouldn't have to go home early to face that clingy monster. I didn't even talk back when the client chewed me out. I didn't leave work until almost 10. Unexpectedly, I ran into Leo downstairs from my office. He said he was just passing by. But after our previous encounters, I gradually realized he wasn't as harmless as he appeared. So when he offered to treat me to a late-night snack, I refused directly. It's very late, I need to go home. A look of unwillingness flashed in his eyes. Thankfully, Edward appeared just in time. Neither Edward nor I actually liked being overly affectionate in front of others. But, uncharacteristically, he wrapped his arm tightly around my waist. Young people these days all like to eat street food and pre-made meals, huh? He looked at Leo coldly, the slight arch of his eyebrow filled with disdain. Not like us old guys, who just diligently cook the food our wives like and then wait for them to get off work. I have to say, Professor Edward looked quite childish when he was jealous. And kind of cute. I suppressed a laugh and linked my arm through his. Honey, let's go home. On the way home, I received a text from Leo. Chloe, I can tell, you're actually not doing well after getting married. I glanced at Edward's perfect profile as he drove. Then I looked down and replied, mind your own business. Honey. That night, Edward kept calling me like he was possessed. Each call was accompanied by an eager, hot kiss. The kisses tickled me, and I instinctively pulled away. Edward's face instantly clouded over with a wronged expression. Honey, I've called you so many times, and you haven't called me anything back, and now you're trying to get away from me? It finally dawned on me that he wanted to hear me call him hubby. But I definitely called you that once today. When Leo was there. Edward wasn't buying it. He gripped my waist and shifted me down a bit. Well then, in a little while, I have my ways. Hey, no. I'm really tired today. No. Spare me for today. I was flustered, wrestling with Edward on the bed, trying to outsmart him, when my phone suddenly rang. Edward reached out to silence it for me. But I saw it was my mother-in-law calling and snatched it away quickly. Mom? Calling so late, is something wrong? Chloe dear, I have a nephew who'd be perfect for you. He's younger than Edward, and has a sunnier personality too. Once you and Edward are divorced, how about I introduce you two? Edward heard every word clearly. His face darkened as he snatched the phone back. Mom, if you're really that bored, go transfer some money to your daughter-in-law for fun. With that, he hung up. When he looked down at me, his eyes started to smolder. Well, this time I really couldn't escape. Why is it that whether he can perform or not, I'm the one who suffers?